I wanted to go deep. I wanted to find what was at the very bottom. And that's when it like and slapped me in the face. This whole this entire concept.
Hi, welcome to Inner Archaeology. I'm Sarah Turner.
And I'm Emily Pennystone, and we're so happy that you're tuning in today.
And we are just two friends who like to talk about why we do the weird shit that we do and all of the beliefs that got us to where we are. But you can find us on innerarchaeology.com, on anywhere where you stream podcasts. You can also find us on innerarchaeology.tv or YouTube if you want to watch our beautiful faces. And we'd love it if you subscribed, left us reviews, told us what you want to hear about. And you want to tell them about our Patreon?
Yeah, we've got a Patreon where you can subscribe for like $5 a month, and it is where we put all our like kind of juicy content that we want behind a paywall. There's some good stuff on there, actually. It's pretty great. So,
but like, you've been warned. Some of them are a little scandalous.
The one that's coming out, yeah. The one that's coming out next week is like next level.
I was like, I think you need to put a disclaimer on that one.
Like, I will
like,
for sure.
Listen.
Just let it go. So that's patreon.com/innerarchaeology. Go check it out there. We'd love to see you over there as well.
Yes. So on the last episode that we recorded, we got to dig into what Emily... we call it kind of like our big things, right? Like mine is addiction. We kind of went over that. Yours is religious trauma. And they are important to us because we have basically spent our entire lives unraveling them and the impact that they've had on our beliefs and the way we move through the world and our relationships and just literally every aspect of our life.
Touches everything.
It touches everything. And so in the last episode, Emily went through and talked a lot about her experience and beautifully like where she's ended up. And so we decided to do a part 2 because I would love to kind of ask you some questions and also hear more about kind of like the process of unraveling the religious trauma you've experienced, because I know it's wonderful and like so validating to hear somebody share an experience that you resonate with, that you've also gone through yourself. But it's also really exciting when somebody shares like kind of what worked for them on their journey. And so I don't know, I really want to dig into that with you today.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you want to add any like context to this before we kind of
I just kind of, I guess like go back and listen to the episode before this if you want to really like have the full picture. But yeah, this has been because it's been for me, this experience of healing. I think I just inherently knew as I was going through it that I was going to be helping other people go through it. It just kind of is something that I've always done. People would just kind of like come out of the woodwork and like, can I get coffee with you? Can I like talk to you about this? And just like process. So I just found even when I was still in the midst of it myself, that I was just holding space for people as they were also navigating their own version of healing from religious trauma. So I'm so glad to like have this opportunity like on a platform like this, that I can like share this with more people, and hopefully you will feel seen and validated in your own experience and
maybe find some helpful tools. Seriously. It's also like pretty wild to me because I remember like I've been a part of so much of this, but not all of it, right? Like I didn't know you when you were like in your early 20s and like first starting to like unravel all of this. But what has been really apparent to me is that like for me, my struggle is addiction because it's so traumatic for everyone involved. The amount of tools and resources on addiction that are out there in the world is enormous, right? Whereas there's like, I mean, you only came across the word religious trauma like maybe 5-6 years ago. I remember when you found it.
And there was only one book.
I found the word.
There was one book called Leaving the Fold, and it was the only book on the topic. Yeah, the only one.
Which is wild. So it's like you have had to navigate something that doesn't have like the resources like I had. I mean, there's like
Yeah.
literal facilities I can go to.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that exists for people with religious trauma yet, but it might need to. And so I don't know. One thing that stands out to me, because I am familiar with a lot of this journey, is that you had to like really identify some of the most core harmful beliefs and then choose other ones.
Mm.
And so could you maybe share with us a little bit about like what were some of the like beliefs that caused the most harm,
Mm.
and what did you ultimately kind of replace them with?
Yeah. That's such a good question, because that was like, that's kind of what I ultimately did. This is how,
Thanks.
this is where the growth happened for me. And we always joke
Mhm.
about how like people who grew up in quote unquote cults, that we are like, they're always like so awesome
I
because they've
love
had
them.
to, yeah, they like gravitate towards you, or you gravitate towards them. But
I literally like so many of my friends in my
so
life
many.
have like left like cults, and I don't say that lightly. Like I'm not joking when I say
Mhm.
cults. And then also like when I meet people and I'm like 5 minutes into our conversation, I'm like, were you like in a cult or in a culty like situation? And they're like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, how'd you know? And I'm like, you're my people. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is, but yeah. So
There is this
sorry, I didn't mean
like,
to cut you off.
yeah, no, it's so funny. We joke about it all the time, but there is this level of, if you have had to move out of any type of like all encompassing indoctrination, you have to essentially disassemble and reassemble your reality and your sense of
Hmm.
self. It's like a
Hmm.
whole process.
And your
And
belief structure.
it's just
Hmm.
like, it'll go down to the nuts and bolts, and everything needs to be built back up. And
Hmm.
that process for me was very much what you were talking about. I had to identify, what are these beliefs that are not serving me, and then I had to
Hmm.
like get rid of those and get new ones, and this was like a whole, I'm still doing it, I'm going to do it
Hmm.
for the rest of my life. For me, some of the core beliefs were that um I cannot trust myself. That was a big
Hmm.
one, because I believed that my human nature was sinful and it was
Hmm.
bad, and I cannot trust it. I have to actually kill it off. And I can only
Hmm.
trust Jesus or God or whatever. And so that takes away a human's like agency as a person, and you could
Hmm.
see that that
Hmm.
would be really functional if you are wanting an entire group of people to be very docile and obedient. Like, you need to
Hmm.
make sure that they distrust themselves. um so that was a big one. And I kind of man, how did I like shift into like fuck, so much. It just started with I think for me, I just had to start noticing what was like going on in me.
Hmm.
I had to start noticing,
Awareness. Bringing
yeah,
awareness.
bringing
Hmm.
awareness, and like acknowledging my pain. Like
Hmm.
there was this whole thing, there's this whole thing that happens, that I have seen in people that I've talked to, who have also experienced religious trauma, that they defend their abusers. Like, they defend the
Hmm.
things that cause them harm and pain, because they so badly don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or like
Hmm.
disrupt anything or shake the boat, that they'll like they I've had conversations with people like looking at me straight in the face, defending the very thing that they're saying like hurt them so badly.
Hmm.
And like, so it was such a big part to even first just like notice the pain and admit it, like admit, oh my God,
Hmm.
that hurt. I love the person. Like, I love that person so much. But what they taught me, like, fucked me up. And like, those two things can exist at the same time. Like, just because I acknowledge like this doctrine or this teaching or like how you went about this was not good for me, and I still love you,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so that was a big part, to stop defending the systems that were causing me pain, and to just let myself
Hmm.
admit to myself what wasn't working, and that was the beginning of like
Hmm.
bringing awareness to the things that weren't working, the beliefs that were there that were not
Hmm.
serving me. But in order for me to like it was such a fundamental core part for me to start trusting myself and start being able to listen to my inner guidance system and my intuition that was like, this is good, this is bad. I didn't have any of that. That was all beaten out of me. Beaten out of me, like mentally. So that I guess that, was a little abstract. I feel like, let me think of something that was a little bit more concrete.
I mean, that resonates even with me and my like version of like what has impacted me, because oftentimes it's our parents and like what they did or didn't do. And the thing is even when it's not like big trauma with a big T, there's little traumas. And so often I've had conversations, even with like Ben, where I'm like, man, that must have caused so much pain in you as a child. But the gut reaction is to just defend your parents, because you're like, overall, my parents were wonderful.
They were doing the best they could.
My parents are wonderful. Your parents are wonderful. We love our fucking parents. They literally did the best they could. It was pretty damn good. Like, I feel very grateful. But because of that, like, it's so, like, there's so much, when there's so much to be grateful for, and like how you were raised, and because they're like, it's, and we dismiss our own experiences because it's like, I don't know, it's almost like there's like a shame of admitting, because we know there are other people who had it worse or harder or whatever. Right. And it's just like, but like, that is so not helpful.
Yes.
And like, ultimately like healing. And the faster you can like acknowledge that there are going to be some things in your childhood that caused you tremendous pain, because again, maybe it's because you're 7 and that was the biggest pain you've ever experienced.
Right.
Like, that's how you're going to move through it, not through like, yeah, but I don't really have anything to complain about here. I don't know. I just like when you were talking about that, because it is so hard when it's, especially in your story, like it came from the people that you love and you trusted.
Yes.
And that's honestly the hardest, because it's like,
and it's this, you articulated that so well. And it's this, you have to expand into being like, your love for your parents and your acknowledgement of the pain they caused you can exist at the same time. And it doesn't mean
was what I wanted to call out. Thank you.
It doesn't mean it takes love away. It doesn't mean any of that. Like, it just means that you are becoming attuned to your own like experience as a human, and that's good.
Honestly, for me, it's helped me love my family more, because I'm not being impacted by the things that cause me harm in the way that I used to. I'm no longer living in that anger and that resentment. And so I'm able to like see them for the humans that they are, and like hold so much more space for them, and like not have it all get on me and trigger me, and like, and that's what you've done.
And the thing, like, a thing that I would like to point out is, I get to heal from this because my parents gave me an upbringing that was allowed for me to actually do this great inner work. Like, this is such an important
chills.
This is such an important piece, because I didn't grow up in a home where I was just like literally trying to survive, or dealing with like physical abuse and all, or like not being able to like feed myself and like basic functional things. I would not be doing this work right now. I'd still be like figuring that shit out. But because my parents solved those problems, and they might have experienced that when they were kids, but they like bridged this huge gap. So I get to like do inner work and heal like my heart and like my mind, like because of the bridge that they gapped. And yes, there was still pain. And just like I'm gonna fuck up my kids, my parents fucked up me, but it's like I get to now heal because I don't have to just survive, because that was a gift they
and they had
me.
To survive.
Yes.
Right. It was so much harder. There's so much like genuine scarcity in their lives.
And I'm bridging a gap for my children. They're not going to have to contend with religious trauma their whole life. They're going to get to do other things, and they're going to get to heal from other things in their life and from the ways I fucked them up. And I'm going to be like, do it. Go for it, So it's like, it's such a complicated feeling. But there's gratitude, love, and acknowledgement of harm that was done. And all of that exists at the same time for me. It's like,
that,
yeah.
and that is the important thing here, because that was a realization I think that took me so long to really figure out, is that things can coexist. Like two seemingly contradictory truths can actually coexist. And once you start adopting that, it's like the same process of integrating the fact that like we're made of many parts and we're not all one thing. And like that is like one of the biggest things that I think has helped me heal in like in my life. And I think that you said that, and I really wanted to call it out. I'm so glad you like said it again. Because that's like one of the keys to like unlocking this, is when you can be like, this fucking caused me pain, but it wasn't like all bad. And then being able to tease out like what was yours, what wasn't yours, you know, that's another part. Like
that's a
being able to tease out like what of these beliefs did I just like adopt without realizing and without like consenting, even because I was just like a child.
Yes.
And which of these do I want to like keep and choose, and which ones do I need to discard? And such a hard thing to do.
So that's it's interesting that you bring it up that way, because the process that I went through, I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. Like when I first was like becoming aware, and I think this is like a really common thing, because you were like, that was bad. It all goes, like all of it goes. We're cleaning house, like blank slate, starting fresh. I think that was important for me to do. But I did throw away like parts, I think, that were like inherently like very true to me. They just had been colored and twisted to fit into a certain space. And so I remember I actually, because the religion I grew up in, evangelical Christianity, is very mystical. Like it like when you think about it, it's like, when I'm looking at it now, it's like very magical, like the Holy Spirit, and you're being talked to, and people are speaking in other languages, and you're like healing people. There's like all this stuff. I was like, wow, it's like super magical, mystical, like experience, you know? And so when I was like chucking all that out, I went like the other direction, which is what you do. I pendulated. And I went through my like nihilistic phase, where everything was like meaningless and nothingness, and it's all, we come from dust and we will return to dust, and it's nothing and it's pointless. Like I had
which is so not you,
so like not me. But I had a phase. I mean, it didn't last a ton, because I remember I was like a few months into this phase that I was like, I'm very unhappy. Like I kind of just like admitted it to myself. I was like, this makes me feel very unhappy. And that's when I started kind of like going back with the whole baby out with the bathwater, going back and being like, what parts are me? And there were these parts of me that do believe in this like mystical, magical experience of the world. And that is very like, I am a very like spiritual person, you know? And so I was kind of like adopting those things back into, but making them mine, because I grew up in a way that they were shaped into fitting into something else, like I had said before. And so that was a really important process, because in a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people do a very similar thing, where they'll throw out their like religious beliefs, just throw them all out, and then just science only. It's only science, or it's only if you can prove it with science, and this is the only thing that I do.
Did that.
Yeah,
I 100% did that.
Yes. Okay. Yes, you did.
Like that was like me for a long time. I was just like, I live in the science world, and
it's
then
the only thing you can prove.
So like masculine and like science, and everyone else is so stupid and so judgmental and so angry.
And it feels really, I think that's another area that feels really safe, because it feels safe for your mind, because it removes the need for faith. You don't have to have faith in anything, because you can just prove it. It's just fact. And I think that that's a really important space for some people to be in, to kind of heal and recover, because their faith, that part of them that believes in things that they really can't explain, had been abused. Like that part of them was like fucking tired probably. And so like, I think the people that kind of pendulate to that side, it just makes a lot of sense. But I think like to heal and to really integrate, it's important to kind of go back and like see what are the things that really maybe are inherently a part of you. Is it part of you that really does want to believe in something bigger that you can't explain? Does that make you feel really safe? Like what is it? Or is it more of like having a mission in your life, having like a purpose in your life? Is that something that's really important to you,
Yeah, for me it wasn't even I feel like so many of my beliefs it feels like when I was kind of going through that, and still now with adopting new beliefs, like does this make me feel bigger or like inspired or empowered, like feels almost like too big of a leap when I'm like trying on a new belief. Do you know what I mean? But for me, I don't know why, but like for me it's always was the question of like, does my life like get easier and feel better, just
Ooh,
like
I
slightly,
like that.
ever so slightly.
I like that.
When I not even like believe this or fully adopt it, but when just I leave space for it to possibly be true.
Yes.
Yeah. Like just even like the possibility, like that's like, what I've done with like in the conversations with Ben, I'm like, but like when you are so rigid and you're like, absolutely not, there's no space for like manifesting or just like mystical things to happen. Like what are you actually doing for yourself? You're not leaving space for just like for something that literally can like do nothing but bring in a little magic into your life. You know what I mean? Like some sparkles. Like there's not really any benefit other than like what, protecting your ego and making you look smart and like a certain way to like whoever, like, but also like I don't know, I'm at a point where I'm like, who the fuck cares?
Right, exactly. That's a good, like, so, I like that whole idea.
Like for me, it's like a baby step before that. Like just like maybe.
How does it feel if I try it on? Like, this is interesting because I think a symptom of religious trauma is a deep distrust in any like other system, like just across the board, and an unwillingness. I know I experienced this, an unwillingness to subscribe wholeheartedly in anything. Like it's so fun. I kind of like walk through. I mean, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard me say it a ton of times. Like I don't actually subscribe to this, but it's something I'm workshopping. For the rest of my life, I'm probably going to say that because I like can't wholeheartedly like allow myself to be wrapped up in something because for the most part, none of us fucking know, and I can't like prove any of that. Like there are some things that are for sure for me, like for sure, like the love I have for my daughters, for sure. There's like these things that are like concrete that I know to be good forces of like making my life better. And then the other, like the magical things and like where I think we come from and what the point is and all that stuff, it's exactly what you were saying. When I considered it, like, how did it make me feel? And for me, usually I have this little sense of relief. Like if I'm considering an alternative belief or a different way of thinking about things, if I have a sense of like, oh, like that feels like nice. Like that feels kind of relieving to think of it that way. Like maybe it could just be that easy,
maybe
and
it
that
could just
always
be that easy.
Maybe it could just be that fucking easy. And those things are always like feel so much more in alignment. Anything that feels like it's dogmatic or it is like unforgiving or it's authoritative or like you're going to be punished if you don't do it this way, those things I shy away from. And there's actually a lot of those belief systems in like modern spirituality or whatever. There's a lot of things in there that are very dogmatic, and I don't participate in that.
Dude,
that
seriously, there are some things where I'm like, wait, what is happening here? We've just like replaced one thing with another thing.
100%. It's just a new version. 2.0.
This reminds me, because I know some of your beliefs, and one that came up for me while you were talking was the belief that like, and I'd love to hear you kind of talk about it.
Yeah.
If you feel like this resonates with the religious trauma and like ties in, but one of your beliefs that I know you've kind of workshopped, struggled with, kind of moved through is like I don't want to say victim, but like feeling like things are just like happening to you.
Oh yeah.
Rather than
I didn't consent to my
like
reality.
you Yes,
Yeah.
you didn't consent to your reality rather than being like an active participant in your
Yes.
reality. Like that's been a
Yes.
big one for you. And I just like,
I mean,
I
that's a
love your
huge
thoughts on this. So.
fucking, like, that's like a big shift. And honestly, it's kind of like a widely default accepted, I think, just setting. Like if you're thinking of like your beliefs as like your character settings, a lot, I think this one's handed to a lot of people as a default. And it's that you were put here by God,
Mhm.
by some intelligence. You were put here by randomness, whatever, like whatever you want to say it. And to me, having a belief that God put me here with this family, with, you know, gave me this, and I couldn't have ever articulated it until just in the past few years, but it was this feeling of, I did not consent to this life. I did not consent to this body, to this family. And it was this deep, like almost like resistance to like just living and what was happening in my life. And so because I didn't feel like I was an active participant in it, and especially paired with the all of the like shutting down my intuition, all the deep self-distrust that was just like driven into me by like the doctrine, it very much felt like life was happening to me 100%.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
either I was like in the will of God or out of the will of God, and I didn't really know like how to determine that. And it was
Mhm.
just, God had this preordained plan for me, and it was just going to happen unless I fuck it up, and then I'm going to go to hell and burn in a lake of fire or whatever. So yeah, I didn't really feel like I was very much in charge of my life at all.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
honestly, that was like a thing that played out for a long fucking time. And that has been something that I've only, like, I'm even getting to other layers of that, even just in like the
Mhm.
last year, like
Well,
deep layers of that.
it makes you a victim of like your reality and
Yeah, you're
experience. And like,
victimized by reality. Like, what the
yeah. It's
fuck?
interesting because I don't have this belief at all. And so when you, I just remember like the first time, one of the first times you told me it, I was like, oh shit. Like that would fuck me up so hard. And
Yeah.
I just like,
Yes.
it's like I don't know, I like love this about us because we have similarities obviously, but we're also so different. And
Hmm.
so when I hear you talk about these beliefs, I don't know, I just think that like your friendship for me has been such a good lesson in like, and just like I like really trying like our friendship. I don't think I ever did this before our friendship, like earlier in my life. I don't think I had the capacity for it. But to like
Mm.
really listen and try and understand the
Try to
core
understand.
beliefs that
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, that you have, and not like be like that's silly or ridiculous, but instead be like holy shit, like you're like that's a lens that like colors how you
Right.
like move through the world. And just kind of have like I mean like really I kind of had like a sense of like awe, like whoa,
Yeah.
dude,
I,
that's gnarly. Like
it's fucking gnarly.
I can't
Oh
I
man.
like and I try to like put myself in that and like okay, so what would that like how would that like affect me on a day-to-day basis? And like the thing that comes to mind is just like feeling so like out of control
Out of
and
control.
like
Yeah.
completely out of control, but also controlled. You know what I mean? Like having
Yeah,
no sense
like
of control of
constricted.
yourself, but being
Mhm.
controlled and constricted. And
Right.
I know myself. And like, if that had been a core belief of mine, I mean, I would thrash. Like, I would
Yeah.
be like a mantra of mine that I say when I am like not in a good place is I am not trapped. I am not trapped.
Mm.
I am not being forced to do this. Like, I can do whatever I want. And
Mhm.
so I don't know. I have so much like admiration for you identifying that belief and then like
Mhm.
how you've chosen to adopt this new belief of being like a creator of your reality.
Mhm.
um like even as far as like you know you have the belief, and I haven't had kids yet, so I don't think I've like even like grappled with this, but it'll be interesting to see where I fall. But you've adopted like kind of the belief that like your children chose you and that
Mhm.
experience rather than
Mhm.
just being like plopped into this like
Like,
whatever
better not
life
fuck them
and
up. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and like and having the pressure of feeling like yeah,
Hmm. And
you could
this was
just like
a
fuck them up.
this whole, like, for me, this was like the core. Everything kind of stemmed from this, because it was just
Mhm.
my, like, from the moment I existed on this planet, this was
Mhm.
like, this had colored, because I, drew it all the way back to everything. God put me here. He didn't ask me what I wanted or what I thought, and it was such a subconscious belief, and it dictated my entire life, and it was so limiting, and I experienced a lot of self-loathing. I experienced a lot of, like, hatred for my body, and discomfort in my body. I experienced frustration with just even, like, the era I was born in. Like, that's exhausting. And I like, I did, in my own version, I felt like I was at such a disadvantage because of the settings, or this thing I was handed, and I just, like, I didn't have acceptance for my reality, but it was happening whether I wanted it to or not. And what that was creating, that was just, like, not creating a life that I was, like, thriving in.
Right. I was
And
gonna ask, do you have any specific examples of how it like showed up?
well, like, I mean, the big ones that are easy to think about is just the, like, hating my body was a big one, and
Mhm.
just, like, never being happy, never even, like, letting myself be really happy with my body, and that got more inflamed, kind of like the older I got, actually, like,
Mhm.
teenage year, like, it just got more and more inflamed. And then also just, like, this the self-loathing I experienced, just this, like, deep,
Mm.
like, disgust for myself. Like, why can't I just fucking be, like, not this, and
Mhm.
just feeling like anything I did or said, it just, like, and there were other factors, I think, that was inflaming that as well. But how I kind of even really got to understanding, like, because somebody listening might be like, how do I even find a fucking core belief like that? I didn't know that existed
Mm.
until I saw
Yes,
it,
great question. Holy shit.
and this is part, this was so powerful for me. I started just integrating, like, a meditative process, like a meditation
Mhm.
practice, and for me, it was my meditations were like an inner exploration. I was trying to, like, explore my subconscious to see, like, what is existing down there that's dictating my reality, because this is the whole thing of this podcast. Our beliefs shape our reality. And so meditation can take you into, like, alpha theta brain waves, where you can, have closer access to your subconscious and your beliefs, and it's actually, you can do amazing things with guided meditations or self meditations. And I remember taking myself through a meditation that, like, unveiled this for me.
Wait, will you make one?
I Yeah, I can.
You should
Like, for
make
this
one
process, actually, I really
for
fucking
this
should, for this
process.
exact process, because I know
Put
exactly what
it
I
put it in
did.
Patreon. I
Okay.
think you should make this. I think you should
Yeah.
do one generically for just like identifying beliefs that kind of dictate your reality. Cause like how often do people ask that question? And that is the first step is like asking the question and then kind of noticing your day to day.
Becoming
And for
aware, what
me,
are
I've
the
always
beliefs?
noticed
Yeah.
and for me, I think the first place actually that's like easiest to spot is in other people, the people you most immediately surround yourself with, right? So if you're
You could
asking
see that
yourself like that
reflecting.
question, yeah, because you can see the things that come out of their mouth and you're like, huh, do I have that belief? You know what I mean? And then you start to like
Yes.
become aware of your own thoughts. Oh my gosh, I want this meditation. Thanks. Please make
Yeah. So
it.
essentially, and it was very simple. I just was like, I wanted to go deep. I wanted to find what was at the very bottom. Like, what was the very first established thing that all this stuff is built on top of? Um, and so in this meditation, it was just really simple. I remember I like went down like to the bottom of like, it was like a well that I was in, and it was super, super, super deep. And I was just like going down. I'm like, what's at the bottom of this like belief, you know? And, or like my, I don't know, my fucking psyche. And so, and I remember I got to the bottom and I didn't feel like it was deep enough. And I started digging and I dug, and I ended up finding this like rock, and I picked up the rock and I looked at the bottom of the rock, and that's when it like fucking slapped me in the face, this whole this entire concept of, and it was almost like it was written on the rock, but it was like it like just came to me. It was just like, you do not believe that you have consented to your reality. Like, you believe your reality is not consensual. And I was like, that's fucking it. It was like, it was the biggest epitome, whatever, like life-changing realization that I had ever had. And I remember I
I
couldn't fucking
remember
stop
it.
talking about it. I was like, do you
I
guys know
know.
about this? Like, do you know about this shit? Oh my God.
I remember it. I remember it so well because I was just like, whoa, dude.
And then it was like we were talking about earlier. I just was like, okay, so that doesn't work for me anymore. What is like another option? And then I looked over at, maybe I consented, maybe somewhere my soul was like, yes, this body,
Mhm.
this family, this time, like I consent to this whole experience because I want to experience this. And that feeling felt so empowering. It felt so liberating that I was the creator, that I consented to this, and I'm actually the creator of this life. And I picked this body. It was like pretty instant, like not it wasn't instant, but like, because I had habitual patterns, but the self-loathing started going away, the hatred for my body started going away, the distrust for myself started going away, all of this, where it was showing up in my life where I was just fighting against this thing that didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me anymore. And I felt so empowered, and then carried that over to my children, like the belief that they chose me to be their mom, not because I'm perfect and I don't have to like prove to some God that I can like do right by him, but instead I can just show up for my kids as best as I can, and that's what they want. They wanted to do life with me. So freeing, so liberating. And those, yeah, so
Yes.
that was like the core thing for me, and that was the kind of the tool I used to get there. Because you can't, honestly, like the more I think about healing, the more I think that it's about actually doing less. Like, it's not about like thinking
Mhm.
harder,
And
working harder,
unlearning.
it's about taking things off, unlearning, doing less, like almost maybe just
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
looking at yourself.
Simplifying.
Yeah.
Yes, I so agree.
Yeah.
I so agree. What
Hmm.
were some of the most important like books or people, or I don't know, just I know people are going to wonder, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like religious trauma, but like cuz I know
Hmm.
you've read all kinds of weird books that have helped you in
Hmm.
this
I
process that
have.
probably weren't even about religious trauma
Yeah.
specifically. Um
Yeah,
but
that's a good
yeah.
question. There was the only book about religious trauma that was even around when I was going through this process is called Leaving the Fold, and it's by a
Mhm.
psychologist, and so she does it very much from that perspective. And it's starting to happen, but it needs to be so much more of a conversation in the psychology world. And
Mhm.
for therapists and all that stuff. But that book was
Mhm.
helpful because I felt very validated. I felt like, oh, this is a religious trauma is a real thing. But for me, actually, like when I'm thinking about who was like the most profound, or one of the biggest impact, it's this woman on Instagram. Her name's Alex L. I think her Instagram
Yes,
handle is
I
just
know Alex
Alex.
L. Mhm.
She How she like speaks to herself and about herself, and how she honors her human experience, like with reverence. She has like a
Mhm.
reverence about her, like how she moves through the world, and how she speaks about her experience, and how she gives herself permission to feel. There was something about that, like seeing somebody move through the world in a way that I had never allowed myself to do, like not even a little bit. And
Mhm.
and I remember I just started, literally, it was so funny. I had a journal, and she would post on her Instagram all these like affirmations, and I would just copy them. I would just write them in my journal, and I would pretend like I believed these affirmations.
That's the thing about affirmations.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to pretend. Like they don't always like, usually you're like bullshit.
Right. And I would never be able to come up with this on my own. I remember where I was sitting in a coffee shop in West Asheville crying and writing these affirmations because I was just like, this feels so good. Like, oh my gosh, it feels so good to just be speaking to myself so kindly. I'm like so hard on myself. That was a big thing for me. And let me think of any other things that really stick out to me. I don't know. I mean, learning about like, I can't think of anything like specific, but it was really like learning how to say no, like, and starting to have boundaries was really, really important for me because I'd never, ever, ever said no. Like that was not an option. And so learning how to do that in a healthy way. And I do know that sometimes it's easy to go to, like we talk about, to go too far on that end. And you're saying fucking no to everything.
It's okay. And you're just like, no. Yeah. And then you're saying no, like, so ungracefully, like
right. It could be
like
that,
don't know how to do it.
It could also go to the point of like burning bridges in a way that isn't like, and things that ultimately are like not serving you. And so learning how to say no well and learning how to have boundaries well was really important. Also, this is one thing I kind of want to touch on because I don't know if this would be a question that you would ask, but there's the issue of the Bible, the Word of God. This is an interesting thing because anybody who's grown up like in a Christian religion, I think will very much identify, or at least like, it's a big deal. The Bible is a big fucking deal. Okay. And like, and it was for me, it was growing up. And I remember a big part of me navigating this is I just didn't read my Bible. It was so scary because it was literally pounded into me that I had to read my Bible every day. Like there are little kid songs that I could sing to you right now that are embedded in my brain that we were taught as children about how it literally, there's a song that says, read your Bible, pray every day, and you'll grow, grow, grow. Don't read your Bible, forget to pray, and you'll shrink, shrink, shrink. This was like the children's song that I sang, which is terrifying. Like, I don't want to shrink and wither away into nothing. And so just like not reading my Bible was a big deal. I remember I would like look at it every day. It would just be sitting there and I would like look at it. And I'd be like, I need some space from you, you know? And we were like doing this thing, but I was dealing with all this like weird pressure and fear of like divine wrath and all this stuff because I wasn't reading my Bible because it was such a foundational thing. So, and I do know that people's relationship with the Word of God is a really important factor in religious trauma because the Bible is often used to defend abuse like in the Christian world. And that can be really hard and really fucked up. So that's a tricky one, but it also I've seen a lot of people who have had a lot of liberating experiences just studying theology and realizing it could just interpretation issues and like accepting the fact that the Bible is something made by man and it's a bunch of humans that put that together and wrote it. But that's like a big thing for people and can be a really, really hard thing for people. And it's very weird. Yeah. To talk about
going through the Jewish conversion process in the classes with Ben and hearing how they interpret the Bible was extremely healing for me. I was like, oh, whoa. Because to me, there was like no other option.
Yeah.
Like, right. You know what I mean? I just like, there's no like, you know, like Christianity fundamentally is like, this is the interpretation and this is it. Right. And then to hear like there's a whole other religion that has a whole other interpretation. I was like, what? Like it like broke my brain.
Right.
I was just like, I didn't know it could be interpreted differently. I mean, obviously it makes sense now, but I like going through it, I was just like, what? How did you come to different conclusions?
Right. like, right. And giving yourself permission, again, going back to like when you've been abused in this way and when you've been indoctrinated and brainwashed, when you begin to question things feels really dangerous. Like you have all like alarms going off, like danger, danger. You can't question things because that might equal like lake of fire for eternity, you know? And so just the simple act of being like, is the Bible like the divine word of God, word for word? It is like God ordained. Like, can I ask that question? Will feel really dangerous, you know, and can feel, and then how it is formulated in the religion is that equals, that's the devil leading you astray. That feeling is like, that's the devil, and like you need to go back to Jesus. So there's a whole structure where it's like you can't win kind of thing, and you really just have to like
break through.
You know, you just have to kind of like literally free fall into the void. But today there's so much more, like there are, even though there's not a lot, but there are more resources. Like the last time I was doing a bunch of research a few months ago, and I went on Amazon and I was like, what are the resources for religious trauma? There were 6 books. One of them was the one that I referred to before. So there have been 5 new books written about religious trauma. So there are some resources out there, and there's a lot of people talking about it. They're coming out. Again, there are a lot of people talking about it with anger and very much around deconstruction, but I'm hoping that more people are going to be talking about it from a place of a little bit more healing too, you know?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about how you're developing your own coaching program. It's not focused just on religious trauma, but I'm sure you're definitely going to be attracting people where that is part of their story. And so I'm just like really excited for that to be out into the world. By the time this podcast is live, you will have already launched it.
It'll be out there. Yeah. I am hoping
your first program.
I know. Oh my God. I'm so excited. I am hoping that as things develop, that I can offer something that is more specific to religious trauma, because I feel like there are so many people that deal with this. And I think it could be something that could just, like, you know how people say create the thing that you wish you had, like the thing that you needed when you were going through your healing or whatever. This is that fucking thing. I needed some sort of like program or course or coaching thing where I could have just like signed up and somebody would have told me, you're not crazy and there's a way through and I'm here to support you. That's all I fucking wanted, you know? And I hope that I can offer that to the world for people who are,
you already are in the conversations that you're having. Like you're already doing it. Like when you went for testimonials for like this coaching program, the things you got back were insane. Like just like incredible. People being like, you've already helped so many people in this area. It's about like formalizing it, and I'm so excited to see that like,
accessibility
accessibility and formalizing so like decades of like work. So
yeah
I love you. I'm so proud of you.
I love you.
I really am. I don't mean that like I don't know. I just like I've seen firsthand so much of the work that you've put into this, and it is like well beyond 10,000 hours.
Oh my God. Like it's it was like all my waking thoughts for like a long time. Yeah. And it's so funny, even though
we've done like read and you have studied and you have just like
talked to people,
workshopped with other people and coached other people. And I don't know. I'm just so excited for what's to come.
I know. And I feel like we barely scratched the surface, honestly, on 2 podcasts. There's so
it's good though.
Much. Yeah.
We needed the context because before we were just dropping religious trauma without digging in. Like, and now it's like, now we have like a foundation. We have a foundation that we can kind of build on. So I'm excited.
Yes. And I hope people feel, my hope is that people feel seen and like they're not alone. If they resonated with anything that I said, that they're like, oh, that they could give themselves permission to like feel the thing, you know? And yeah, you're not alone. I love you. Thank you so much for holding space for me and all of this.
I'm so proud of you and the work you've done in this area. I'm glad we finally made the episode.
We did it. You did it.
You did it. Wasn't that bad, was it?
It wasn't bad. It feels good that it's done. It's happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, guys. Thanks for listening. We love you.
Love you. Bye.